Loner rancher helped a dying Apache girl, then faced 80 warriors at night. Arizona did not have spring. It only had heat, heavy and burning, pouring down from a white sky onto broken rock and dry earth. That afternoon, Elias Creed was riding back to his ranch from the small town of Dustwater when he saw something that made his horse slow on its own. A young girl was hanging from a dried cypress tree. Her wrists were tied behind her back. Her head hung low. Black hair fell over her face in thick knots, hiding most of her skin except where the sun had burned it dark and raw. Her feet barely touched the ground. Beneath her, the cracked earth looked split open, like a wound that never healed. Above her head, a rough wooden sign swung back and forth in the hot wind. The words were painted in thick red letters. Thief must die. There were no people nearby. No horses, no voices. Only the sound of wind moving through dead branches. Elias pulled his hat lower and stared. He had seen hangings before, back during the war. Even then, there had been shouting, anger, noise. This was different. Quiet, careless, cruel. She was young, maybe 18. Her wrists were already bleeding where the rope had bitten into her skin. Elias tightened the reins. For a moment, he thought of turning away. Trouble followed men who stepped where they did not belong. He had lived long enough by knowing when to ride past. Then the girl lifted her head, slowly, weakly. Her eyes found him. They did not beg, they did not plead. They only looked at him, steady and tired. Like small embers buried under ash. Elias felt something twist in his chest. He cursed under his breath and reached down to the old scar at his waist. From there, he pulled a small knife. With one clean motion, he cut the rope. The girl dropped like an empty coat. Elias caught her. She weighed almost nothing. He wrapped her in his coat and turned his horse toward home. Behind them, the sign still swung in the wind, but now it was only wood. It held no power anymore. The ranch sat alone at the edge of the land. A low wooden shack with a tin roof and walls made from sand mixed with clay. Just enough to block the wind. Just enough to keep the loneliness inside. Elias laid the girl on the narrow bed near the cold fireplace. It had once belonged to his wife, long before the world had taken her away. He untied the ropes, slowly, careful, like a man handling something that could explode. He cleaned her wounds with water and a cloth, his movements quiet and steady. She did not wake. Her cheeks were hollow. Her lips were cracked. Her breathing came thin and uneven. Around her neck was a necklace made of shell and wood beads carved with swirling shapes. Elias recognized the pattern. Apache, a tribal mark, something that meant family, promise, and blood. He did not touch it. Instead, he turned to the stove, lit a fire, and set a pot of water to boil. He added dried beans, a pinch of salt. The simple meal of a man who cooked only for himself. When she finally stirred, it was only a soft sound. Her eyes opened slightly, dull like a sky before a storm. Elias stepped closer and held out a spoon of broth. She turned her head away. No one locked the door. He said quietly, "And no one is going to hurt you." Hush. She looked at him again. This time, there was no fear, only deep exhaustion. After a long moment, she took a small sip, then another, testing him with each drop. Elias nodded once and stepped outside. The sun was sinking, bleeding orange into the horizon. A coyote cried from far-off hills. Elias lit a cigarette, but did not smoke it. He watched the smoke drift away. From inside the shack came a small sound. The soft tap of a spoon against a bowl. She was eating. The next morning, Elias walked toward the corral as the sun crept over the ridge. The ground still held faint dampness. Near the edge of the trees, he saw footprints, small, light, fresh. Strip of red cloth hung caught on the barbed wire fence. The pattern showed a coiled snake. Elias froze. 2 weeks earlier, at a way station, he had overheard talk of a missing Apache girl, the daughter of Chief Maka of the northern Chiricahua. They said she wore a shell necklace wrapped with red cloth. Her name was Nahila, keeper of the fire. Elias looked back toward the shack. The girl sat upright inside, sunlight catching in her dark hair. The necklace was still around her neck. Far to the south, dust rose into the sky in thin lines. Riders, someone was coming. Elias closed his hand around the red cloth and walked back toward the house, knowing his quiet life had just ended. The dust in the south did not fade. It grew thicker, rising in long, slow lines that told Elias everything he needed to know. Riders were moving with purpose, not lost, not wandering, coming. Elias said nothing as he stepped back into the shack. The girl looked up at him at once. Her eyes were clearer now, sharp and aware. "Someone is coming," he said, his voice low. She did not ask who. She nodded once, like she had already felt it in the ground beneath her feet. The town of Dustwater sat only a few miles away, but its shadow reached far. Hush. Rumors traveled faster than horses there, slow and thick, clinging to men like smoke. Elias rode into town that morning to gather supplies: salt, nails, cloth for the girl's wounds. Every eye followed him. Voices dropped. A whisper slid across the wooden boards of the general store. He brought an Apache girl back to his ranch. Elias kept his head down and placed his items on the counter. The shopkeeper wrapped the salt with shaking hands and did not meet his eyes. Before leaving, Elias turned back toward the room. "Stay away from my land," he said evenly. "Curiosity gets people killed." No one answered. That silence followed him all the way home. Nahila sat on the porch when he returned, her gaze fixed on the distant ridges. The wind barely moved, yet the world felt tense, like it was holding its breath. "They want me dead," she said, without looking at him. Double quotes, "Yes," Elias replied. "You could turn me in." He shook his head. "I have seen men like them. Hang first and ask later." She turned then, studying his face. "Why did you save me?" Elias thought of the tree, the rope, her eyes. "Because you did not beg," he said. "And because no one else stopped." Night fell heavy and dark. Near midnight, the sound of drums rolled across the land, slow, deep, not rushed. Each beat pressed into the earth like a warning. Elias was already awake, his rifle in his hands. Nahila stood on the porch, her cloak lifting slightly in the night wind. Her face showed no fear. "They are not here to talk," she said. "Is your father leading them?" Elias asked. She nodded. "Chief Maka." The drums sounded again. One more beat, Nahila said softly. Then arrows. Elias lowered the rifle. "I will not shoot a father looking for his child." Shadows moved at the edge of the land. Horses, riders, silent as smoke. Eagle feathers rose from painted faces. Spears glinted under the moon. The third drumbeat struck. Nahila reached for Elias's hand. He felt the warmth of her fingers, steady and sure. "Let me speak," she said. "Say nothing." Elias nodded. Chief Maka stepped forward, tall and unmoving, his presence heavy as stone. 80 warriors stood behind him in a wide circle, their weapons aimed toward one man and one past he could not escape. Nahila walked ahead of Elias. "He did not harm me," she said in Apache. "The town did." A young warrior shouted. Accusations cracked through the night. Mak raised his hand. Silence fell. He looked at Elias. "White men do not save what they fear." "I did not save her because she is Apache," Elias said. "I saved her because she was dying." Nahila told her story. Of the rope, the hunger, the soup. The blanket. Elias held out the strip of red cloth. "If it were my child," he said, "I would want proof." Maka took it. His hand tightened. After a long moment, he spoke. "You will come before the elders." Elias nodded. The circle closed tighter as they moved toward the council fire. Spears pointed. Breath held. One warrior stepped forward. Spear raised. "End this before blood grows." Nahila stepped between them, her voice cutting through the night. She spoke of kindness without asking, of a man who gave without taking. The elders listened. At last, the oldest nodded. Maka turned to Elias. "Your life is spared. Your land will be protected." At dawn, the warriors rode away. Nahila walked beside Elias back to the ranch. Inside, she placed fresh wildflowers by the old photograph on the table. Then she removed her necklace and set it beside the picture. She rode away without looking back. From that day on, every year, an Apache woman came at spring's edge, leaving food, flowers, and a single note. Elias kept them all, because one choice had changed everything. *** Loner rancher helped a dying Apache girl, then faced 80 warriors at night. ***. The land felt different after that night. The air still burned. The rocks still cracked under the sun. But something unseen had shifted, like the earth itself had taken a slow breath and let it out. Elias Creed returned to his quiet days. He rose before the sun. He fed the horses. He repaired fences worn thin by time and wind. He cooked simple meals and ate them alone at the small wooden table. The photograph of his wife and child still leaned against the wall. Its frame tilted, its faces faded by years of dust and light. Beside it now rested the Apache necklace. He did not touch it. He only nodded to it each morning, the way a man nods. To a grave he still visits. Dustwater kept its distance. Men no longer rode near his land. No curious footsteps crossed his fence. When riders passed on the far trail, they did so quickly, eyes forward, hands tight on reins. Word had spread, not loudly, not proudly, but clearly. Elias Creed was under protection. The first visit came. Just as the heat softened for one brief morning, an Apache woman rode in at dawn. She did not knock. She did not call out. She left a bundle of dried meat, a sack of beans, and a small cluster of wildflowers tied with leather. Beneath them lay a scrap of hide with simple words written in careful English. "Thank you for choosing to save instead of turning away." Elias read the note once. Then he folded it and placed it in a tin box beneath the table. He did not ride after her. He did not wave. He simply watched the horizon until the dust settled. Every year after that, she came, sometimes alone, sometimes with a child riding behind her, always quiet, always respectful. The gifts never changed. Food, flowers, a note. Elias aged. His hair went gray. His hands stiffened. His steps slowed, but his eyes stayed sharp, and his land stayed untouched. No thief crossed it. No hunter dared camp there. Even the coyotes seemed to pass wide at night. On his last winter, Elias grew sick. He sat by the cold stove, wrapped in a blanket too thin for the chill. The fire burned low. The photograph lay flat now, its edges worn soft. The necklace rested. Beside it, its beads smooth from years of careful keeping. When death came, it came quietly. They found him seated in his chair, his hat resting on his knees, his face calm. In his coat pocket, the men who buried him discovered something unexpected. The Apache necklace, worn, polished, treasured. They buried him on a small rise behind the ranch, where the land looked out toward the ridges. No preacher spoke long. No crowd gathered. Just wind, sky, and earth. That spring, an Apache woman came again. She dismounted slowly and stood before the grave. She placed flowers at the marker. Then she spoke softly in her own language, words meant for the earth and the spirit beneath. When she rode away, she did not leave a note. There was no need, one choice, one glance. One bowl of soup, enough to turn hatred into silence, enough to turn blood into memory, enough to change the path of many lives. Simply because one man chose not to turn away.